Nobody can benefit more from Friday's preseason game than Shedeur Sanders. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Shedeur Sanders is slated to start in Friday's preseason opener, and no one has more to gain from that game than him. Why in the world was Tyler Huntley taking so many reps at joint practices? And other notable things that happened in Carolina today. First, though, I do want to thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well, and it's totally free to you. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcast, and, of course, the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And we now know for a fact that Shedeur Sanders will be starting on Friday for the Cleveland Browns in Carolina. Kevin Stefanski confirming those reports on Tuesday that he would be the starting quarterback on Friday against the Panthers in their first preseason game. There were some more comments from Kevin Stefanski just in regards to his plans moving forward. Basically made it clear that it'll only be Shedeur Sanders and Tyler Huntley who even get a chance to play on Friday. They're putting Joe Flacco in bubble wrap, probably because they have two other quarterbacks who are hurt, and so they're trying to protect him. And then also, we know because those two quarterbacks are hurt, and Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, they won't be playing. Kevin Stefanski also made it clear that he will not play most of the starters on Friday, and so that's notable as well. We'll get into some more of those things here coming up later in the show. But the first thing I wanted to hit on was just the fact that with knowing Shedeur Sanders is starting on Friday, first of all, this game could end up being the most watched preseason game of all time, at least the most watched Browns preseason game of all time. Because listen, Shedeur Sanders is without question a star across the NFL, and somebody who people are following this Browns team right now. I see it on the network as well, simply because Shedeur is on this team. And so there are going to be a lot of people tuned in and glued to their TVs to see Shedeur Sanders make this start in the first preseason game. And what's going to be interesting is because, as I found out from Julian Council yesterday, who hosts Locked On Panthers here at the network, he told me flat out that that Canales, their head coach, has made it clear that they want to start these starters for, I think he actually clarified today it was going to be about 12 snaps, 12 plays. And so it will be Shedeur Sanders against the Panthers' first-team defense. It will be the Panthers' first-team offense against the Browns' mixed and matched first-team/second-team defense. So we'll see what all that kind of looks like. But Shedeur Sanders is going to get a real opportunity here to go up against an NFL caliber, an NFL starting defense on Friday when this game opens up. And so, listen, I don't know if there's anybody, and I understand this team has a lot of rookies on it. This team certainly has guys who are vying for roster spots, and that's what the preseason ultimately is about, right? Is the guys on the back end of the roster trying to prove on tape and put in a game setting that they deserve a spot on this roster, and sort of those guys in the bubble get a chance to, find a place or find a home if they earn that spot. So I'm not saying those guys don't have something to earn, or that there aren't other players with something at stake here in the grand scheme of things as they try to, make an NFL roster. But when it comes to this Browns team, there isn't a player on the roster with more to gain from Friday's game than Shedeur Sanders. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the stuff at practice. We've seen the rep distribution. We know he hasn't taken reps with the ones to this point. But him getting a chance to go out there in a live setting and go up against the first-team defense of another team is going to be the best chance he gets to prove, hey, time to give me more reps, time to let me run with the ones, time to really show you what I can do. And if he does it, I mean, the outside part of it, the outside noise is going to be louder than ever for Shedeur Sanders to see more time and take more reps. But I think internally they're going to have to start to sort of pivot their thought process if he really looks great against especially that first defense for the Panthers, and he's out there just balling. And there's another thing too, like there's one thing that I don't know a lot of people have accounted for. I know the diehard Shedeur fans who are mostly here because of Shedeur Sanders or following this team because of Shedeur Sanders. Like, I know you guys know this already. I certainly know this from watching his tape a lot and watching a lot of those Colorado games last year. Shedeur has that gamer persona in him where basically what I'm getting at is like when the lights turn on, when the lights are their brightest, when you're out there on the field and you're expected to go make plays, he performs. He puts on a show. And he kind of alluded to that actually on Monday before practice when he met with the media, because he said, like, somebody asked him, like, what are you expecting from the preseason game? It was a question along those lines. And he basically said, like, I mean, you saw me in college, you know what I can do. It's going to look like that. And that's the thing that I think should have everybody excited, because they're all like, I understand, the practice reps, they show you something. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's a piece of the puzzle. In the meeting room, film study stuff and learning the playbook, that stuff absolutely matters as well. It's part of the puzzle. But there's always one thing, and this isn't just Shedeur, but like across the league, there's always one thing that you sometimes can't account for with a player. And that's their ability to, when the lights are on, when they're out there on the field, when they're playing in a game setting, what do? And some guys can just rise to this different occasion, even if the practice tape or the practice hasn't, the practice reps haven't been great. And I'm not saying, by the way, that they've been bad for Shedeur. I'm just saying, like, in other instances, sometimes there's guys who, like, practice isn't the setting for them, but when they're out there on the field, they just turn it up a notch, and there's just something about it, and they relish that feeling. And that's what Shedeur has. He is a gamer. He's a guy that when the lights are the brightest, when he's out on that, the field is his stage. And it's the stage for all these players. But for Shedeur, like, there's something about that environment of just being on the field that brings out the best in him. And I think we saw that certainly in college. I think some of that probably comes from his dad, right? Like, growing up as the son of Deion Sanders, Deion was like that. Deion was a show within the show that is football. And I think he thrives in that environment the same way that his dad did. And so you can't account for that in practice. You can't account for that in just like watching, tape in the film room and all that. It just kind of has to happen naturally, organically, when you put them out in those situations on the field. And so I'm excited to see that element of Shedeur's game come out of him, hopefully on Friday, and allow him to have success that I'm anticipating he's going to have. And if he does that, if he balls out, I mean, it's going to be louder than ever for Shedeur to see even more reps and get even more of a fair shake in this competition. And I do think the Browns still want to be patient with him. They don't want to put him out there too soon. And I think I think to a degree, I think that's okay, because this organization has messed up a lot of quarterbacks by putting them out there too soon. But Shedeur can really force the issue if he goes out and balls on Friday, especially against the Panthers' first team defense for what Dave Canales is saying is going to be like 12 reps or so, or 12 snaps or so. That's going to be a key thing here. And I don't know that enough people have accounted for the fact that Shedeur has that gamer mentality about him. And that could just mean that, like, on those stages, he's going to be better than even what he's looked like in practice. And that's going to make it undeniable. That stuff, like the preseason tape stuff, is going to, it's another piece of the puzzle. And sometimes guys just thrive in those environments. I think Shedeur fits that billing. And I think we'll see that from him on Friday. So, as I said, I don't know if there's a single player that has more to gain from playing in Friday's preseason game and making a name for themselves and showing what they can do than Shedeur Sanders himself. Tyler Huntley is the only other quarterback expected to take reps on Friday, according to head coach Kevin Stefanski. But his involvement in practice today with the Panthers was a bit perplexing. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is just around the corner, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. My most competitive fantasy league is on Yahoo Fantasy. It's the most fun league I play in every year, and my friends and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy and having a good time. You should too, whether you're a first timer or you're joining your 1 millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team each week gets eliminated until there's only one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play a head-to-head private league as well, or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. So I became perplexed, and obviously I'm not in Carolina. As you can see, I'm in my little basement recording space here, but I became perplexed by the reporting out of Browns practice today, the joint sessions with the Carolina Panthers, because it appears that Tyler Huntley took a decent amount of snaps, I guess you could say, and there was sort of still this rotation going on where it was Joe Flacco with the ones, Shedeur Sanders with the twos, and then Tyler Huntley with the threes. And listen, I understand. Kevin Stefanski said before practice that Huntley had just joined the team on Tuesday. And so there is almost like an acclimation period here where they're trying to get him up to speed and get him sort of acclimated and make sure he understands the playbook and everything that they're trying to do. And I said this the other day. Tyler Huntley was here last year. So I think he has a general idea because some of the basics of Kevin Stefanski's offense were in last year's playbook. There were some remnants of that. But they also were running an offense that was catered to Deshaun Watson, as we well know. And so I think it was different in terms of terminology and different things like that they were trying to deploy and use and accomplish. So understanding that, I can understand where they want to get him acclimated. They want him to sort of be up to speed. They want to, make sure he's prepared or as prepared as he can be for this game that he's about to play in on Friday and take some reps in as after Shedeur obviously plays for as long as he's going to play for. But here's the thing. And I've talked about this a ton. The Browns do really value these joint practices. The Browns use this as one of the bigger pieces of the puzzle, even maybe more so than preseason games, to determine, okay, who do we like in certain spots? How do we feel about this player? Who's going to start? Who's not? These joint practices are one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle in that for the Cleveland Browns every single year, because Kevin Stefanski talks about how much the value they get out of these. And it's a controlled setting where you can basically work on the things that you want to work on, but you're going up against another team and they're trying to maybe do a little bit more scheming against you because they have their own sets of red zone plays that they want to run or whatever it might be, whether you're on offense or defense. And so the Browns really like this stuff. And so to me, Wednesday was supposed to be, and Stefanski even said before practice that Wednesday was going to be more about getting the veteran guys and the first team, the starters, as many reps as possible and making sure like they got some good work in on Wednesday, because most of those guys aren't playing on Friday, as I said in the first segment, which by the way, Kevin Stefanski didn't go position by position. He never does that in this time of year and tell you like this guy's going to play, this guy's not going to play. He did say that Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman were two names he specifically brought up as guys that won't play. So Shedeur will not have his top two receivers out there as he plays with some other members of the first team potentially. But regardless, like today was supposed to be the day that was about the ones and getting most of the reps and really utilizing this practice space and this practice setting to get in some good work for those guys as they prepare for the start of the regular season. And so even giving Huntley some minimal snaps with a third team just seemed weird to me, because it like he and this is no disrespect to Tyler Huntley, but he serves no purpose here other than to get you through Friday's preseason game and maybe stick around to get you through preseason games number 2 and 3. But that's about it. Like Tyler Huntley is in no way part of this Browns quarterback competition. he is not going to be in this conversation for earning the starting job. It makes no sense to really even prioritize getting him reps and getting him out there and letting him work in that setting that before practice Kevin Stefanski said was going to be more so about the ones and getting those guys up to speed and getting them some meaningful snaps against another opponent. Like, that was supposed to be the point of Wednesday, not getting a quarterback that is going to play maybe the second half of a preseason game acclimated. And I understand, like, you want to get him sort of settled in. I understand that. And he just showed up yesterday, and so there's some things that he's got to get prepared for. But to me, I guess that's what you use Thursday for. Like, it's not like the guy's never played football before. So like it's so you put him out there maybe on Thursday when they do their walkthrough. That's where you sort of implement him a little bit more and get him making sure he can make the calls and all those different things. And at the end of the day, too, it's a preseason game. Like, you don't really need him to be so in depth with the playbook that he's like, that you're running like some trick plays and like doing some fancy schmancy stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be that. You can just run some basic offensive concepts and get him out there on the field to eat up the clock, eat up a couple quarters, and be on your merry way. It doesn't have to be this elaborate thing where Tyler Huntley's like really digging deep into the playbook and pulling some stuff out. Like, I just don't understand the thought process there. It sounds like other members of the media contingent that I interact with every day that were there were also sort of perplexed by the entire thing and why he was getting some of the run that he got, and that they even wasted reps on him when he's literally only here, at least for now, to get you through Friday's preseason game. It was bizarre, and I if this practice was supposed to be about getting ready for the start of the season and getting that first team meaningful reps, it seems silly to waste some on a third string quarterback, or at least third string right now, but really like fifth string in the pecking order of this quarterback room anyway, just to get him quote unquote ready for Friday. Again, it's a preseason game. I don't know. Like, if this was the regular season, fine, I get it. But this is a preseason game where you can get in and out of that thing running basic concepts with whatever backup quarterback you want to put out there. It seemed unnecessary to utilize any sort of reps on a guy who isn't really long for this quarterback room or this team anyway, and that you're just kind of bringing in as a crash test dummy for Friday's game. That's maybe a mean way to say that, but it is kind of true. And that's kind of the nature of the preseason anyway. You have a 90-man roster for a reason, because you don't want your starters and your top guys taking the brunt of these hits for 3 different preseason games on and on and on. You want to get them to the regular season healthy, so you throw some other guys out there and you need more bodies on your roster, and that's you kind of just do it that way. It's the sad sort of state of this time of year in the preseason and all that anyway. But yeah, just a weird way that they handled those rep shares today based on what I was kind of following along with from some of my other reporter friends. And I came away sort of stunned that they even wasted as many reps as they did with Tyler Huntley, just trying to get him acclimated in a setting that is supposed to be a pretty important barometer for where the team is at and what guys where guys are with the first team, like what you still got to work on, and get a sense of those guys in important, meaningful snaps. It just seemed weird that they would utilize as much as they did on Tyler Huntley. And really, they also took snaps away from Shedeur, who's basically like, he's trying to get ready to start this preseason game on Friday. Yes, maybe with most of the second team, but like, you could have used those snaps to get him even more prepared, somebody that you're actually trying to evaluate in this competition over Tyler Huntley, who, again, is only here for serving one purpose and one purpose only, to get you through Friday's preseason game. Didn't understand it. Seems like a lot of people couldn't understand it. And it's something Kevin Stefanski's going to probably have to explain a little bit when he gets asked about it the next time he speaks. So, other takeaways from Wednesday's joint practices with the Panthers, including a concerning trend that seems to be rearing its ugly head from a year ago as well. We'll talk about that coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. Listen, I get it. The NBA playoffs wrapped up earlier in the summer, NHL, same thing. July is always like the dog days of summer when it comes to sports. In August, there's the training camp is starting. This football's on the horizon, but it's not quite here yet. And so while we're still a couple months away from the football season starting, summer might be considered a downtime on the sports calendar, but it doesn't have to be if you make FanDuel part of your viewing experience. At night, I get my son down to bed. I generally throw some baseball on the TV and start throwing some bets together via the FanDuel app. Whether I'm placing a same game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so some other observations from joint practices with the Panthers. And I thought that, well, so first of all, there wasn't a lot of things to consume not being there. And regrettably, I wish I could have been. Just travel-wise, wasn't in the cards for me. I also had some stuff going on at home. So regardless, I will be in Philly next week for joint practices, so I'll have live reporting for you there. But in the meantime, there was no video allowed. So it was harder being at home or on the home front or for you as a fan to sort of see what was going on in real time because they were prohibiting video. But there were some things that stood out. I saw DeJuan Jones have some nice reps and sort of like these offensive line versus defensive line drills and show off like how strong he is. And going against somebody other than Myles Garrett, like that situation prepares him, that those reps against Myles prepare him to really see anything that these other defensive lines can throw at him. And so I thought he showed some strong presence in some of those drills that were video was sort of surfacing or circulating around. Sounded like Jerry Jeudy had a really good day, which makes me so happy because as the resident president of the Jerry Jeudy belongs in the top 100 players conversation fan club. Jerry is, I talked about having that gamer mentality. Jerry has that. And yeah, like he last week and even on Monday, I think he might've had a drop. I can't remember, but I know like over the weekend, he had a couple drops and he had a little bit of a rougher practice late last week, but he gets the pads on against another team. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, he's brilliant. Everyone was saying the play of the day was like a 30-yard pass to Jeudy on like a deep crossing route. And he made a nice catch on it and then cut it upfield. And if it was a live setting, it probably would have been like a 60-yard touchdown. So he had a really nice play there. Jerry was balling out, which I've come to expect. And so that's an encouraging sign. Joe Flacco was talking about him after practice and just how great he is. So that was good to see. And yeah, a positive day on that in that regard for Jerry Jeudy. And I'm glad that he balled out in that way. And I hope he continues to do that to pave the way for another great season. So I can be even more right about my take that he belongs in the top 100. Anyway, that's just, selfishly, I hope that happens, but we'll move on from my selfish desires. Sounded also like Ronnie Hickman made a few nice plays, and that's encouraging because that second safety spot opposite or next to Grant Delpit, it's not up for grabs, but you want some stability there. A position that Andrew Berry hasn't been able to fill over the years. Juan Thornhill didn't work out. John Johnson III before that. And if they can kind of find a person that can man that spot in Ronnie Hickman and do it consistently, the guy who's on a cheap contract, rookie deal still, and obviously is like a homegrown player, that's huge. If you can sort of solve that hole that way, rather than feeling like you have to address it in free agency or through the draft or whatever, that'd be awesome for them to know going forward that he can hold down that spot. And also like the safety rotation in general is something I'm going to have my eyes on throughout Friday's preseason game and the rest of training camp, because Hickman could get moved around quite a bit. They like to run these three safety looks. And we saw some of that after Martin Emerson Jr. got hurt, where Hickman was actually down playing that nickel spot. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of comes along the rest of the way and the rest of camp. There was also, and this is the one, it wasn't all positive. And you don't expect it to be in these settings. That's the whole point, is it's a learning experience. You get a chance to do things and correct them as you go. But one of the most concerning things that was reported from joint practices on Wednesday was that there were a lot of offensive penalties. I saw a lot of holding calls being reported. I think I saw at least one false start. And Those are the things last year that I think set the tone for how especially the early portion of the season was going to go offensively for this Browns team. And it was a problem. They could barely get plays off because there was constantly offensive penalties. They could barely move the ball up into the field because there was constantly offensive penalties. That is not what you want to see from this offense as they attempt to, put up better numbers and be more productive than they were a season ago, obviously. And so that was a bit concerning to see that was coming out. Now, again, it's a controlled setting where you can correct those things. The penalties are called. You get a chance to go back out there, correct it, run the play again, try it all over. And you'd rather those things happen now than in the regular season. But in the name of trends and bad trends, you don't want those things to become habits, because the pre-snap penalties, the offensive penalties in general, were an absolute killer to this team last year. And once it really became a problem a couple weeks into the season, we all thought back to training camp last year where it was like, why are we surprised that this is happening when this is what was happening at training camp? So in some respects, I understand it's training camp. You take some things with a grain of salt. I understand it's preseason. You take some things with a grain of salt. But those types of habits and making sure you're not getting penalized and making sure you're doing things the right way, there's not false starts, the pre-snap stuff is getting eliminated because those are controllable penalties. Those things matter and do translate to it's like your practice habits lead to your game execution. And for them to make sure those things get ironed out now is important. So I'm kind of glad this is the first time that the Browns and Kevin Stefanski has held a joint practice the first week of the preseason. Hopefully that offers a chance to get those kinks worked out now and fix those things. And then next week against the Eagles, you'll see less of them and less of them and less of them and less of them in the games leading up to the start of the regular season. And those bad habits will sort of, be out of their system here before the season actually begins. That's the hope, because you want to be able to just hit the ground running, especially offensively, given how terrible things were a year ago. And so it'll be interesting to see if that becomes the case. But start of a concerning trend. You don't want to see those pre-snap penalties, especially, but any types of penalties can deter you. And I think it became a problem last year. It kind of mounted over the course of the month of August, and then it was their identity throughout the regular season. So get those things fixed now, and hopefully things are a little cleaner on Friday, and then cleaner next week against the Eagles in those joint practice settings where they'll get even more of an evaluation of where things are at for both sides of the ball. Another episode down with your Dog Pound. And as always, I want to thank you for joining me to talk about your favorite football team. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. We'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow, including, listen, I know the first team's probably not playing much on Friday, but how much should they play in the preseason? We'll get into that. We'll obviously have the preseason game on Friday to talk about and then react to later on in the evening. So again, hit that subscribe button and make Locked On Browns your first listen, both here, both wherever you get your podcast and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On Bets, where betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Or, as always, you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.